Hello folks, my name is Jim Worthen. The show is Worthen One. We're here on channel 17 at 7 o'clock on Fridays, and then during the week, every day, replays. And of course, it's all replays. None of it's really live, and but it's allows you to see what's happening on the show. Now, we're on the south coast of Santa Barbara. We'll cover Goleta to Carpinteria on cable channel 17. But that says my sainted brother, who was a jazz guy, that's just the first verse. The next verse is, we're on YouTube, Worthen One. We're on TVSB on demand, all the way to the bottom, alphabet, I guess, Worthen One. So you have several different platforms, and out of the two that I mentioned, the TVSB on demand and YouTube, you can send the show to your friends anywhere in the world. And a lot of what we discuss doesn't pertain just to Santa Barbara, and it applies to many governmental jurisdictions. My guest is Scott Wenz. Cars Are Basic, you know him from, but he is sending out a letter next week to the city, and it's a demand letter, and I'm going to read from it, and you probably will see it and see the answers that he expects and the answers he'd like to hear before the bureaucrats are able to mess with it. So, is that okay, Scott?
Yeah, close enough.
Close enough for government work, huh? All right, we'll come back to Cars Are Basic and evacuation plans and
Sure.
all sorts toward the end. But let's go to your letter is a Public Records Act request. Now, what does that mean?
Public records are records that are kept by the city or government agency in the state of California. And what they want to do, what they have done in the past, is they say, okay, we don't have that record. But so we're asking under the California Public Records Act, Freedom of Information Act, for any records having to do with transportation-related issues.
Well, it's interesting they tell you they don't have a record on something they are just doing.
Yeah.
Hold on, next. Okay, there we are. This is going to Kelly McAdoo. Who's that?
City administrator.
And Clifford Maurer.
Right.
Who is he?
What does it say there?
Public Works Director.
Public Works Director.
And you repeat, this is a public records request under the California Public Record Act. And that's supposed to be available to any citizen who
Yes.
requests it.
The government agencies have 10 days to respond that they've received the request, and they have 30 days to give you an answer. They can say, we're not going to give you the answer, or they can say, we don't have the answer. But if they say, we're not going to give you the answer, then you can go after them.
Okay, I don't know what RE colon means, but anyway.
Reference.
What has been the outcome of the narrowing of local streets on traffic flow, parking, emergency response, and retail businesses? What do you think they're going to say to you?
Well, they're going to say, oh, well, you have to understand that we're building a new Santa Barbara, and it's going to be so wonderful. And all they have to do is look at the city of Goleta, post-COVID, almost the first week that the COVID restrictions were lifted. Calle Real Shopping Center, Camino Real Shopping Center, all of those started coming back, and they're now full-blown shopping centers with cars and people shopping and creating tax revenues for the cities.
So
And it's
Right.
not happening in the city of Santa Barbara, because the city of Santa Barbara, in an infinite unreasonableness, turned around and said, by the way, we're not going to open up State Street because we want to create a promenade. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to put trolleys on State Street to make it work.
So you want to see some proof, some studies, something that shows that
Sure.
what they're doing is...
Sure, they should be able to prove. It's now been 5 years since COVID was lifted, five plus, okay? So they should be able to prove that people are coming to downtown Santa Barbara and shopping in the retail stores. Well, guess what? The retail stores have been leaving. When the minute their leases are up, they're walking away.
Yes.
And CVS and a whole bunch of other places just recently walked away from downtown.
Yeah, when you first started making these requests, we had a Macy's downtown.
Nordstrom's downtown.
Yeah, Macy's was consolidating. They had an excuse because they had the one at La Cumbre, but we had Nordstrom's,
Right.
and we don't have Nordstrom anywhere anymore.
No, you don't. And as a matter of fact, this is getting into the weeds a little bit because of the state of California and the Regional Housing Allotment Act. You're going to see Santa Barbara not have a department store in 2 years.
Well, and next was anybody from Carpinteria, particularly the people in Montecito and the Riviera, who gave See's candy boxes and See's closed. And it went to La Cumbre, where it's going to close again, and we won't have a See's candy anywhere, will we?
Well, they plan on keeping that little strip mall, which is the entrance to La Cumbre.
Oh, the right, we
Over
should
there,
turn
where,
in
yeah, the
Panda Express, and
right.
although Pandera was there and it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's one thing to say we're going to keep keep the strip, but it's another thing to see.
It won't
keep
provide
the
enough.
business.
It won't provide enough business.
Yeah.
Okay. They will have people, and then they will say, "Oh, we're going to build this 700-unit housing unit, and it's going to be so wonderful, and we'll have the Santa Barbara strong, ideal 15-minute walking city." Well, guess what? It hasn't worked. I have been to major cities along the East Coast and the Midwest of this nation, and conferences I've attended. And you'd walk in and you'd see this stuff happen. You'd come back on the rotation 10 years later, you'd see it kind of hurting. You come back 15 years later on the rotation, and it was a pile of junk. And then the governments would have to come back in, raise off everything that they built, and rebuild it.
Yeah, the idea of walking doesn't seem to work. Like when State Street was viable, people would wait to get on the shuttle rather than walk 3 blocks.
Well, you see, and I'm glad you brought up the shuttle, because the original electric shuttle that the city had was nothing more than a glorified parking lot shuttle. And they couldn't get enough people to ride that shuttle to make it work. And the Cars Are Basic went downtown and started taking video of the failure of that shuttle system. We walked up to SBCAG and said, "By the way, you want a fun of this? Here's the reality."
Yeah. Well, as I say, it always bothers me to see government transportation provided and people who should be walking not even walk a half a mile.
Well, Cars Are Basic, meaning me, took a challenge that was laid at our desk by the Bicycle Coalition and the Community Environmental Council. They said, "You don't know what you're talking about. You can go out and walk." And so I was working at a job that was approximately 3 blocks from where I was living in downtown. So I would get up for over 2 months every day, and I'd walk over to work. And then if I needed groceries, I'd walk over to a grocery store like Ralph's downtown. Then I'd walk back. Let me tell you, it takes approximately 5 minutes to 10 minutes to walk 1 city block. And if you're loaded down with groceries, you have other issues going on, you cannot make that efficiently. And then because of my logistics, I had to go out to San Roque to look after some business at least once a week. I'd use my car. I could not. My efficiency dropped so badly in that 2-month period that I was really hurting. And I turned around and said, this isn't reasonable. It's not feasible under efficiency standards for anybody that really wants to make a living.
Next question, has the blocking free flow of streets, e.g. Sola from De La Vina to Garden, that's been blocked off, you can't go through.
That's right.
That was approved by the City Council to improve and promote bike use and reduce auto use, made downtown economically a success?
No. And the answer we expect is, you don't understand. We are in the process of redesigning downtown, and eventually people will become used to it and they will flood downtown. It's not going to happen, folks. All you have to do is look at what the city of Goleta has done in the last 4 to 5 months in downtown Old Town. They narrowed down a wonderful 4-lane street with adequate turn, adequate parking, and the businesses down there are crushingly failing. And the city of Goleta has now said, oh, we're going to give grants to these businesses so that they can survive the adjustment period. Well, I already saw the adjustment period. I saw it in downtown Santa Barbara. It didn't work.
Yeah, it's, I always think of The Music Man, that great musical where the huckster came to town and he was going to teach all the young people to be in the band.
That's right.
And of course he had to sell instruments. And there was a group of salesmen on a train in that, and the Buffalo Bills, and they said, you gotta know the territory, you gotta know the territory, you gotta know the territory. And that's something government never really knows, the people, the territory.
Well, the problem we were having, particularly in South County of Santa Barbara, is that the political structure has said, we will educate the people and the people will become happy with our reconformance. Well, guess what that was? That was Hitler's Germany, that was Stalin's Russia, that was Mao's China. We will teach you to be conformists.
And you'll be happy with it.
That's right.
Yeah. Businesses and residents have stated this outcome has failed. What bike counts prior to and after these projects have been done has the staff, including SB traffic engineer, stated the increase in bike use? Are there bike counts?
Well, there are no bike counts.
Oh.
That's number one. Number two, the city of Santa Barbara has seen a definite drop because Cars Are Basic has been going out and watching the bikes. And the people don't want to come downtown because there isn't anything to come downtown for anymore. Downtown Santa Barbara, by locals, is called Death Valley. And
it's hard to do some of the shopping that people want to do in downtown before all this,
right?
Because you couldn't carry it on a bicycle home.
That's right.
And particularly you couldn't carry it on a bicycle to Montecito, and so our action was killing the businesses.
That's right. Santa Barbara was an ideal downtown mall before there was a downtown mall, because it was a efficiently running transportation grid that the council and traffic planners have intentionally crippled.
Next question. These are questions you're sending under
to the city of Santa Barbara, yes.
Under the Information Act.
Right.
Has the hiring of Ed France, we'll get back to who the hell he is, but he's hired in Public Works, as it influenced reports in Public Works, and council or city administrator's office? In other words, is this guy?
Okay. The gist of that was that has the hiring of Ed France, the former executive director of the Bicycle Coalition, influenced the city of Santa Barbara transportation policies. He's now working in parking management for the city of Santa Barbara. Well,
wait, where did he come from?
He was a UCSB graduate in environmental studies from the Bren School.
That's strike one.
And he got himself a nice cushy job as the director of the Bicycle Coalition, because the Bicycle Coalition had been in a lot of disarray since Ralph Fertig had passed away. Ralph Fertig had been one of the longtime directors of it. But Ralph Fertig realized what was happening. And Ralph Fertig, approximately a year before he passed away, sent out an email that Cars Are Basic was able to get a handle on. And that email stated to the insiders of the Bicycle Coalition and the anti-car people in Santa Barbara that if you don't start getting people out biking on the streets, you're going to be sitting in a parking lot watching the cars go by. He was absolutely correct.
You mean a bicyclist is going to be sitting in the parking lot watching?
No, not the bicyclist. The bicyclist will not have a way of getting around, and they'll be sitting in a car in a parking lot watching the other cars go by. Because
going out to Goleta.
No, any place.
Yeah.
I mean, the city of Santa Barbara anti-car groups have been inanely inept. I mean, absolutely inept when it came to the long-term projections. And they're spending millions, tens of millions of dollars. The city of Santa Barbara just boasted that they have just under 100 miles of bicycle paths in the city of Santa Barbara. Well, where are the bicyclists that were riding the streets of Santa Barbara 20 years ago? Well, they're not there anymore.
Well, for years, growing up until maybe 10 years ago, bicycles rode with traffic. They had the same rights as the cars.
Right.
The cars had to yield to them, and it worked perfectly. Nobody ran over a bicycle with their car.
Well, there was the occasional accident. Let me give you a classic example of failure. They have the MODOC bike path, and they now call it a multimodal path because they couldn't get enough bicyclists on the path to make it a bike path.
Okay.
So they have this bike / multimodal path, and they had a couple months ago a bicyclist hit by an automobile. Well, that wasn't supposed to happen with the design that the transportation planners had put on MODOC. This would solve any problem.
Is this MODOC going down toward Hollister?
No, yes.
Okay.
But it was a bicyclist that was riding into Santa Barbara.
So he was doing right and he got hit.
Yeah, he was in the bike path. He was doing what he was supposed to do. He then crossed into traffic without looking around. He violated the DMV laws. He got hit, and then the naysayers, the let's cry in our handkerchief crowd came out and said, "See, we have to do something about this." Well, they did. They spent millions of dollars, and it didn't work.
Really, the tragedy of all these government planners is a good example is if you drive Haley Street. You're driving Haley Street, there's a bike path going, it's one way.
That's right.
And you better watch because bicyclists are coming the other way.
That's right.
Because most of those bicyclists are not the young person, they're older people, they're people with drinking problems, and they won't go over one block where they could be going that way.
Well, you have to understand, this is a classic failure of the Bicycle Coalition and the Community Environmental Council and other anti-car people. They said, if you create loops for the bicyclists to use, they will find it efficient and easy to do. So they produced a bike path on Haley Street. And that bike path on Haley Street did not generate the bicycle numbers that they wanted. So they went over to Coda Street, and they put another bike path and took a whole bunch of parking off of Coda Street that hurt the businesses there. Now, so you have a loop coming in on Coda, you have a loop coming out on Haley Street, and this was supposed to solve the issue of people on the Lower East Side getting to downtown Santa Barbara without the use of an automobile. Well, I can tell you, 9 out of 10 times you go over on Coda Street, you could shoot a howitzer down the middle of the street and you wouldn't hit a bicyclist.
I cut across on Haley Street 5 or 6 times a week, sometimes 2 times in a day, and it's terrifying the way the bicyclists are coming the wrong way at you.
They don't care.
And you know.
But you have to understand, the majority of those people that are riding the wrong way are the scofflaws. They're not the people that are doing biking for business.
They're what you call
they're scofflaws. Scofflaws, okay? In other words, they ignore the law, they ignore the regulations, okay? And as a point of fact, many of them are high school students that have cut class, and they're downtown.
Yeah, the high school students, college students, except for UCSB, are not using their bicycles like they did 10 years ago.
No.
They've got cars.
Well,
or a friend who has a car.
Yeah.
Or a girlfriend who has. Oh, go ahead.
I find it interesting you made that comment, because I was talking with an individual who was in favor of bicycles and so forth, and we were talking about the Auburn Trail. He said, "You ought to see all the people out in Goleta that are using the Auburn Trail." I said, "Okay, how many of these people are using the Auburn Trail outside of UCSB and Isla Vista?" Because it's a tight area, and they sometimes get into Goleta, but very seldom do. And they're using this tight loop that's part of the Auburn Trail. Oh, you ought to see all the people doing it. Well, guess what? You have a group of individuals, generally between the ages of 18 and 25, that are college students. They don't have a lot of responsibilities. They don't have to meet a job. They don't have to raise their kids and carry the kids around on the bikes. They don't have to go out and buy groceries because they're generally single. That's why they're using their bikes.
Yeah, well, terrifying experiences to drive through Isla Vista and see the bicyclists going in or out of UCSB and ignoring stop signs, ignoring traffic laws, just bent hell out of,
They just don't care.
Yeah.
Because the average individual, I'll go back to when I was in college. College was kind of cool. I was no longer in high school. I could wander around and do kind of what I wanted to do. And a lot of times, I'd cross the street when it wasn't safe. I'd ride a bicycle and blow through a stop sign.
I bet you rode a bicycle on the sidewalk even.
No, didn't do that. It wasn't doing that. But I mean, the point is that these are individuals who are in the process of still maturing. And all you have to do is take a look at psychological science and anatomy, and you can see until you hit about 22 to 25, your brain has not matured enough to really handle logical decisions.
Mine was, but anyway. The problem I see is the bicycle population has changed radically in the last 10 years. It used to be that, particularly if you were driving through downtown Santa Barbara, it was people who had an alcohol problem, and they had Zona Seca there on, I guess, Figueroa or Canon Perdido, and they had to ride to their chemical dependency meetings, and the others were Hispanic working people or poor white working people who couldn't afford a car.
Right.
And two things have happened. It's become easier to get a car, And it's also, there's Uber, taxis.
Well, actually, my answer to that one is that the minute the state of California gave illegal residents the right to have an automobile and a driver's license, okay, all of a sudden you saw the majority of the working, poor, and lower middle class Hispanics no longer on the streets riding bicycles. Why? Because they'd have a friend that had a car, legally now, and they would climb into the car and they would share gasoline and they'd go out to where they were working. The numbers 15 years ago on State Street, Outer State Street, Delavina Street, Cabrillo Boulevard dropped dramatically when that law was passed.
I spend a lot of time driving north, Santa Maria to Lompoc, and it's amazing. You used to drive, and when the fields were being picked like strawberries,
Right.
there would be the bus that brought the workers. Now there's 6 or 8 nice cars and no bus.
Well, yeah. But that's a different subject. So.
Well, but it's the same thing.
No, I understand that, but I could go an hour on the Hispanic workers out in the field and what Salud Carbajal attempted to do with worker transportation. I just don't want to go there. That's a long story.
Okay. So, bicycle, if we could get them, bicycle counts are way down.
Sure.
And how do you know that?
Because I've gone out in the morning approximately once a quarter, and I will sit at a specific intersection or another intersection, and I will count bicyclists for 2 hours, from 7 to 9 in the morning. Going one direction, going the other direction. Are they turning? Do they appear to be students? Do they appear to be workers and so forth? And the numbers have dropped.
I don't want to rain on your parade, but I think there's a couple of cab people, like the lady who owns a business in Old Town Goleta, who also have done that kind of thing for cab.
Yes.
Count the traffic. What's reality?
The original cab count for Old Town Goleta was done the first year that Goleta was a city. We had approximately 65 bicyclists, majority of which were going into Santa Barbara from 7 to 9 in the morning. And we broke it down into 15-minute segments, so we started counting. Okay, so it was done the way the traffic counters are supposed to do it. The last count we did on Goleta before they narrowed down Old Town was 14 bicyclists from 7 to 9 in the morning. Paint dries faster than watching 14 bicyclists try to go down a street.
Yeah. Have to bring back up our questions. We talked about Ed France. Has it helped the public?
Ed France, I don't know Ed France as an individual. I don't know him socially. The only interactions I've had with Ed France was when he was the executive director of the Bicycle Coalition. And I've seen Ed France because I was working in a building that was on Anacapa Street. I would go down sometimes to take the morning mail down to the post office, and I saw Ed France come flying down Anacapa on more than once. And the worst instance I saw is he was doing about 30 miles an hour when the traffic was doing around 25.
On a bicycle.
He was coming down the right-hand side lane between the parked cars and the traffic. He blew through a stale yellow, which turned into red. He was down by the wine cask, and a driver who was getting ready to pull out of the parking spot almost ran him over. Now, this is a guy who's a college graduate getting paid a very handsome salary as being the Bicycle Coalition's executive director, and he was just blowing through. He didn't care. He was going to prove how great bicycles were. At the same time, Ed France had to admit that the Safe Routes to School program that the Bicycle Coalition had been pushing hard for 5 years had failed to increase the number of bicyclists to elementary schools and junior high schools.
There's some really good bicyclists who follow the rules of the law.
Right.
I love coming up on a stop sign, not a red light, a stop sign,
Right.
and a bicyclist comes up. I hate to say this, 8 out of 10 will blow right through it.
Sure, no, they do,
they,
yeah.
They look each way, they don't want to get hit.
Right.
I thank the one who stops. I give them thumbs up and say, thank you for
Yeah.
following the law.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this guy now, who started out as the executive for the Bicycle Coalition, is Public Works Director of the city?
No. Ed, Mr. France has taken a job for the city of Santa Barbara in parking management for the city of Santa Barbara. He's I would estimate by looking at his job description, he's a mid-level manager. But here's the deal.
Oh, that's 150,000.
He couldn't make it long-term with the Bicycle Coalition. He transferred to another NGO, non-government organization, promoting alternative transportation. He didn't like it there. So now all of a sudden he winds up working for the city of Santa Barbara, getting a government salary, a government retirement, a government benefits package, and if I'm correct, he only has, every other Friday he gets off because the city never came back and said everybody has to come into work.
You ask, the next request is provide any memos, emails, or other communications involving Mr. France and street planning, traffic flow obstructions, including Vision Zero and the bike path planning. What's Vision Zero?
Vision Zero is a plan that has been brought out. This has been around for almost 20 years now, where you come into a city and you narrow the streets down. You then take the speed limit down to like 10 or 15 miles an hour, so that if somebody gets hit by a car, they won't be badly damaged by that car. Okay, the city of Los Angeles, it was reported in the Los Angeles Times approximately 5 years ago, had over a decade of a widespread Vision Zero through a number of communities within the city of Los Angeles. It failed.
Yeah, I was going to say, I had heard that 15 or so years ago, the city of Los Angeles accepted Vision Zero, and about 5 years ago they totally...
Yeah, they just walked away from it because it wasn't working. But you will find planners in the city of Santa Barbara and city council members who talk about how wonderful Vision Zero is. Well, if Vision Zero is so wonderful, you want to bet that the city of Santa Barbara will not recover financially?
Your next question, I think we've answered. What non-government agencies, NGOs, has Mr. France worked for that include anti-car and pro-car removal objectives?
Sure, and we're kind of picking on Mr. France, okay, because he's an easy target. He's been out there. Give him credit. He was willing to go out there and put his reputation on the line for these organizations. Now he's working for the city of Santa Barbara. He's supposed to be in parking management, from what I've read on the internet. If he's in parking management, is he also doing anti-car planning and street narrowing? That's outside of his venue.
So the city of Santa Barbara recently stated they now have close to 100 miles of bike paths. At the same time, staff has not stated an increase in bike use. Post-COVID, SBCC reports fewer on-campus students reducing bike use. what justification does the administrator's office and the public work director and the traffic engineer have for what appears to be the failure of policy and millions of dollars spent on bike paths?
Well, yeah, I mean, the bottom line is if bike paths had been the panacea, if they had worked, you would have seen a reduction in the number of automobiles on the streets because people were using alternative transportation. Now, alternative transportation has been a failure in the city of Santa Barbara for decades. Rob Dayton, who used to be one of the famous alternative transportation promoters in the city of Santa Barbara, in a fit one day when he was asked by an individual that I think is a liar, Greg Hart, who's now an assemblyman. He was a city councilman. It was at a finance committee meeting. He asked Rob Dayton, how is the walking alternative working in the city of Santa Barbara? And Rob Dayton said, you can't get people to walk 5 minutes in downtown Santa Barbara. Now that's almost a direct quote.
I think this is, maybe there are more than Mr. France. Has the city consulted with or hired outside NGO, non-government organization personnel, who have stated or backed street congestion and or concept Vision Zero? We want, please supply the contracts or conversations.
Sure. Look. This is not a trap. It's an attempt to get the city of Santa Barbara to admit to what the council, as a majority, and city staff, as a majority, have been active in. And they have been active in trying to promote Vision Zero, particularly in the last 4 to 5 years, and it is not working. So we're trying to get the city of Santa Barbara, prove it. Who are the people that are doing this? I mean, let's look at one of the people that works for the city of Santa Barbara. You know, I mean, he has a sterling background. He's an Annapolis graduate. He's a former CB. He was one of the commanding officers of one of the largest CB operations on the west coast of the United States.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm not going to say that. Yeah. I don't know that for a fact. So he had to have a minimum of a commander or a captain rank. What's going on? Has he not recognized the issue that every military officer has to address, which is emergency response? Okay.
We're headed right there because I think there's one more question. No, it's just your letter is, your attention to the above is appreciated. Looking forward to hear your response.
Right.
You're not laughing here, though.
It's not a laughing matter because this is under the laws of the state of California. We're asking serious questions as to why the city of Santa Barbara continues to wallow and lose tax revenue. They had the 1% sales tax. Oh yeah, we have to have that. Then that got eaten up by the police department that they're going to be building, the new center for the police department. So they turned around and said, well, we're now $7 million in debt. We have to have more revenue. And the stupid voters turned around and said, oh yeah, we'll give you another 0.5-cent sales tax. Okay, so what you have is you have the city of Santa Barbara is the highest taxed location in the county of Santa Barbara. It's driving business out of Santa Barbara.
Well, this leads us to the tragedy that occurred in Bel Air and the Valley, where over 30 people that we've found the bodies of died in the cauldron and the winds that drove that. We have 2 places in our area that are just set for that. One is Mission Canyon, the other is Sycamore Canyon.
That's right.
They're just funnels. They make Paradise in Northern California where 70 people died. And why did they die there?
CAL FIRE stated that the majority of people that died in Paradise, California were because Paradise said in its own personal arrogance, we're a semi-rural town up next to the forest, and we will build micro roundabouts, we'll build street bulb outs, and when it came time for emergency response, the fog of the smoke was so bad, people that would live there could not figure out how to drive out of the area, and the fire engulfed them.
Yeah.
And this is CAL FIRE determination. This is not Cars Are Basic, this is not Scott Wenz.
So the roundabouts, the bulb outs, the traffic narrowing and calming caused
That's right.
people to just end up cooking in their cars.
That's
some of
right.
them.
Yeah.
And
Now you have the situation with Bel Air, and what was the large fire? Not Bel Air. The one that just happened. Pacific Palisades.
Yeah.
Okay? You had that fire. What is when one of the issues that people now want to come back in and start cleaning up and getting out of there? The city of Los Angeles has determined that because of the number of e-bikes and electric automobiles in that location, that the people are advised not to go onto their own property if they have that, because the damaged batteries could explode on them.
Yeah.
And when they explode, they almost burn with a military term, white phosphorus. Okay? So the city of Los Angeles that has been promoting this, the state of California, we need to have these e-cars and we need to have the alternative transportation and all the rest of the stuff, are now faced with a toxic mess.
well,
So what's going to happen in the city of Santa Barbara, the next Sycamore Canyon fire that blows out, comes down right past here where this location is, comes over the top of the Riviera as it did before. I was watching that fire. It was 3 miles from my house. If the wind had not stopped, it would have burned right down through City Hall.
well, it burned into the city, and we've always had that problem in that the winds coming down the canyon,
Sure.
which aren't even the classic winds; they're just down canyon winds.
Right.
And yet, since you and I have been talking about it, since people have been worried about it, I would bet through AUDs and homes where an older person gives up their home and a family of 4 moves in, I bet without question that the population on the Riviera above Sycamore Canyon is
All over, it's doubled.
Doubled at least.
Yeah. One of our advisors works in emergency planning. And he said at the state level, you have fire chiefs and fire organizations screaming bloody murder at the state of California and Sacramento, saying, stop RENA, stop the high density development, because we as emergency response people do not want to have to go into these communities, because the backyards are now filled up. You start getting these explosive fires, and it just keeps blowing and blowing and blowing. The emergency people that are willing to talk on the private level are saying the state of California has screwed up not just a little bit, and that means everybody in the city of Santa Barbara, the city of Goleta, the city of Carpinteria that are continuing to push this stuff are not being reasonable. And look what's happening at the La Cumbre Plaza. They want to build 700 high-density units where Macy's is. They want to go over and build another, what I believe it's 400, 500 units where the Sears building is. Okay?
Yeah.
These are emergency time bombs that will happen. It's not a matter of if. It's going to be an earthquake. It's going to be a fire. It's going to be a flood situation.
Yeah, it's, we have to realize that our road system, our infrastructure, well built, sometimes even we notice it's crowded, will be just crushed by people fleeing and moving.
How do you think people that live in the 15-minute city? I love these idiots that talk about the 15-minute city. Okay, if they don't have any cars and there's a major emergency, let's say there's a 7-point earthquake, how are they going to get these people out of the location? I know, we'll bring buses in. Well, the buses won't be able to negotiate a lot of the streets, that's number one. And number two, the capacity of the buses on a high-density infill city, 15-minute city, will be so great they won't be able to get all the people out of the location.
I think it was in the last couple of days I saw now granted it was the biggest fire truck we have, the hook and ladder,
right,
backing up, going forward, backing up to get around the roundabout at Salinas and Montecito Street.
Oh yeah, well look, Cars Are Basic was started by a bunch of local people, myself, Tom Becker, Rachel Barnes, Alex Salcido, Jay LeBonville. We're just average guys, okay? We saw what was going on in the street and we said, what's going on here? And then you form the organization, you start doing investigations, and then we got a federal handbook. And the federal handbook says, do not put small and micro roundabouts in urban traffic that experiences rush hour traffic, because it will not handle it. And you see it all the time. I mean, just go over Las Positas and Cliff Drive. It will screw up over there. When they get high density traffic over there, it's a bad, bad location.
I have an idea of my own. I'll ask you for some ideas in the last 10 minutes here, but I would like to ask the city where they've stationed bulldozers
to move the cars.
Yeah, to be able to go into the go into the Mission Canyon and the foothills to push cars out of the way of the people fleeing and the first responders.
Yeah. How many D9s can you put on contract?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, one of the.
Oh, you mean you have to have people in contracts? You just can't have the bulldozer.
There you go.
Oh,
there you go.
okay.
Now,
my idea.
Now, I would like to throw a little challenge out, and this is not meant in a nasty way. The gentleman that was retired from the United States Navy, not West Point, there I go, being an Army guy, the Annapolis graduate, who has a degree from Berkeley, who has run emergency response and has to plan for emergencies. I invite him to come to a Cars Are Basic meeting. We'll give you plenty of time to sit down to explain his position, but he will then have to answer questions from people without having the 3-minute, thank you very much, get out of our podium. And we will be polite.
Yeah.
We have never been nasty to anybody. We had the former dean of the environmental studies come in to a CAB meeting just about 4 months ago.
Right.
And we treated him very well.
Yeah. He enjoyed it, and we learned some things, and he learned
That's right.
a lot of things.
You were there, right?
Yeah. I would love to take this emergency service, or whoever the city has appointed as emergency service director, on a ride through the foothills and the streets and point out that cars have a hard time. There are too many cars. They're hard to find parking. It's worse than Isla Vista.
Well, why are there too many cars? Why are there too many cars?
Because the house that used to have a couple and their kids left, and then they left, and now there's a whole new family or a group of people.
Well, what we're talking about is RHNA, Regional Housing Allotment, forced down the throats of every community in the state of California. And you have people like Scott Wiener senator in the state legislature who says, we will pass a law, and they did, that says you may not use zoning to stop the high-density infill that we want. So you don't have enough parking for the cars.
We don't have zoning anymore.
That's right. The state of California wiped it out. And then you see these things like Palos Verdes, Pacific, Paradise. These are absolute disasters. And they are in part because of government planning.
I challenge anyone in the audience to contact me or you and have a conversation showing us where we're wrong.
Yeah. And the thing that I find interesting is that you get a lot of well-meaning people. But when you start hitting them with the facts of the last quarter of a century, because that's how long CAB has been around, you hit them with those facts and figures. And they say, yes, but I don't want to hear about philosophy. I want to see the outcome. And we don't have the time to get into it, but there's another fiasco that's going to cost over $1 billion to hook Metrolink into the city of Santa Barbara and Goleta and going up to Santa Maria so they can have commuter rail. Now, there is a joke.
Yeah, well,
but
they don't own the rail. The SP owns the rail, and freight has the right of way.
Well, you see, they haven't accounted for their original budget on a 10 to 15 year inflationary value. They have not accounted for the personnel needed to run the trains. They've not accounted for the upkeep of the rolling stock. They haven't accounted for the fact that Amtrak, who runs most of this stuff, is an abject failure over 90% of the nation.
Yeah.
So that's a different subject, but we've been talking about cars shutting down State Street, shutting down Outer State Street, the city of Goleta, and there's stupidity there.
Would the city dare, or would we dare, do a flyer on the dangers on Sycamore Canyon, the Riviera,
Riviera, yeah. No, I understand.
And hand it out to every household.
No, all you can do is just mail it out.
Them.
No, you just mail it out. We did that on the Chapala Street narrowing. Now there's another piece of stupidity. Starting from approximately Arriaga Street up to Mission, they narrowed Arriaga down to one lane. That's what they did approximately 10 years ago from Mission Street to Constance. It was, we will get bicyclists, we will get pedestrians. Didn't happen, isn't going to happen. They failed. Their own statistics prove they failed, and the arrogance of the people that come and work for the city of Santa Barbara and are backed by certain factions that don't get failure is unbelievable.
They don't have common sense. The most valuable thing to a human being, a citizen in a modern city, is their time. And when they do something that is going to take away part of their time, in other words, ride a bicycle from the Mission to downtown when you can drive it in half the time.
Well, you see, and I proved that. I took up the challenge. The Bicycle Coalition, the Community Environmental Council, the Environmental Defense Center, they're all shooting their mouths off for years. You guys don't understand, and you ought to get out and do it. You can find out it works. It doesn't work. If you're a business person, if you're a person who's working for a business, you need to have efficiency of time and effort. And it doesn't work.
And also efficiency of cities, so you could deliver, drop off, visit, do all the things that people do that they can't take the time to do on a bicycle.
Well, and the thing that's really sad about it, as I have a very good friend who used to work here in Santa Barbara 30 some years ago, the jewel of the California coast she came back and said, I want to have nothing to do with the city of Santa Barbara. She said, the streets are terrible. The businesses are just absolutely no longer there. They don't have any really quality in the businesses, the shopping and so forth. She said, why would I want to live in Santa Barbara now that it's been destroyed for the last 30-some years by a group of individuals that said, we have a better way, and that better way has now failed.
Yeah, you could tell the difference with the downtown strip when a cruise ship comes in.
Oh, yeah.
The downtown strip is for tourists, not Santa Barbarans.
Well, CAB predicted that when the when the Entrada project went in, that when they narrowed down State Street from the freeway down, that what would happen is that the people that come in as tourists into the beach area will stay in the beach area, and sure enough, what happened? The Funk Zone, the old Chart House is now the Fish Place, the old Lighthouse is another place. The people do not leave downtown because they do not want to have to deal with the lousy transportation and lousy car aspects of the city of Santa Barbara.
In the last minute and 30 seconds, how do we reach CAB and get more information and get involved?
We're on the internet. The internet address is Cars Are Basic, that's A-R-E, not an R, .org, carsarbasic.org. We have a full website, we have videos, we have the email address, which is cab@carsarbasic.org. We had a call from up around the San Maria area just last week asking for help. And because they said, oh, we didn't know you were around. Mm-hmm. And they found us on the internet.
Well, you had a nice meeting, the first one of the year.
Yes, we did. That was a lot of fun.
Lunch at the Elks Club, and you'll do that every month.
Yeah.
But I think we ended up with those who came and stayed, and those who came and had to leave early.
Yeah.
About 15 people.
Yeah, and one of the nice things was we celebrated the birthday of one of our board members. And that was a lot of fun. A lot of chocolate cake all over the place.
I had a nice big piece, and a dear friend of ours, a lady, hadn't had her piece, and I gave it to her, and I ended up with one about a third that size. She got the great piece.
See, that's what you get.
Scott, God bless you. Thank you.
Thanks.